The fallout continues after President Trump fired the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics following a dismal jobs report. Joining us right now is White House National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett. Kevin, I want to thank you for joining us.
Sure.
Let's just start with a very basic question. The president said on Friday that he believed that these numbers were rigged, that they were politically motivated. Do you believe that to be true?
You know, as an economist, I like to go for what I can prove, and what I can prove is that the data have become very unreliable. As you know, I've been on this show on Squawk Box before I was here at the White House pretty much every jobs day for the last 20, 25 years, right? We would come up to New York and I'd be on set and we'd talk about the jobs numbers. And when I looked at the revisions that came out last week, I thought they had to be a typo or something. You probably thought so, too. And, you know, it's something that has been a work in progress for us at OMB and CEA here at the White House to try to understand why the data have become so unreliable. You know, there's some part of the story about response rates and so on, but I think it's really important now that we got a fresh set of eyes over there to try to modernize the labor data, because it has to be transparent, it has to be reliable, it has to be something the market can make big bets on. And right now it's not. When the revisions are bigger than the number itself, then you know you got troubles.
Kevin, here's the question, though, and I think we can agree that there could be a modernization effort, an effort to improve the way the numbers are collected so you aren't getting into this revision scenario. Perhaps the model itself needs to be rethought. Sure. I think there's probably a wide agreement on that. However, Janet Yellen said over the weekend that this is what happens in a banana republic when it's considered to be political to remove somebody like that. And as I mentioned, the comment, at least initially, was that this was a rigged effort, that these numbers were being politically manipulated. And so my question to you is, to the extent you want these numbers to have credibility and you want this department to have credibility, who do you think would be the right kind of person that would be able to reestablish whatever credibility you think was lost on Friday, recognizing that the credibility, if you will, of that group may not be as high as you'd want it to be on the sort of metrics of the numbers and your views that the numbers are not as good as they should be, but not that they're being politically manipulated?
Right. Well, first of all, they could be politically manipulated because they're so untransparent. There's a black box system out there making the jobs numbers that needs to be improved. Indeed, the UK saw a similar circumstance like this a few years ago, and they actually shut down the data agency for a month or so until they got their ducks in a row. The fact is that we had these blockbuster numbers for Joe Biden last year that suddenly we lost about 1 million of them after he dropped out of the election. The fact is that you know, I'm an economist, I'm not a politician, but when politicians look at numbers that make them wonder, then that suggests that there needs to be more transparency. So, for example, if I'm running the BLS and I have the biggest revision, really think about it, the biggest revision outside of COVID in 50 years, then it's incumbent on me to explain why in a very transparent way, to show how the numbers add up, to show exactly where the revision came from and what you're doing to address it so it doesn't happen again. If you don't do that, then you create a circumstance where politicians are going to wonder. And for goodness sakes, we know that hopefully not much in the data area, but all over the U.S. government, there have been people who have been resisting Trump everywhere they can. And so to make sure that that's not going to happen in the data agencies, to make sure that the data are as transparent and as reliable as possible, we're going to get highly qualified people in there that have a fresh start and a fresh set of eyes on the problem.
So, Kevin, what I was wondering was I'm ascribing all kinds of conspiracies now, theories to the president and calling for Jay Powell for months to be fired. Do you acknowledge maybe that, I mean, there were two risks from tariffs, and I don't know which one you think was more of a risk for the Fed. One is that the uncertainty that businesses had might cause something to slow down, hiring, capital expenditure. That might affect the labor market or the economy in terms of growth. And the other one was whether the one-time cost increases, you know, there could be retaliation and it ends up being a second derivative and it ends up being inflation. But I could see the president wanting lower rates as sort of to go hand in hand with a tariff regime. And then I thought if he insisted on it enough, which Bach, you know, basically put Jay Powell into a corner, he couldn't cut, then when the economy does slow down, you've got a fall guy ready-made for the president to point to for why it's not the tariffs, it's that Jay Powell didn't cut rates. Mm-hmm. Do you acknowledge that maybe there was a slowdown to be expected from the tariffs that maybe you foresaw?
Well, I mean, what we talked about on your show, Joe, is that we think that, especially at the beginning, that a lot of the tariffs are going to be borne by foreign producers and foreign countries. And that's something we've seen in the data. Again, inflation data are down now at the lowest level that we've seen in over 5 years. And so the bottom line is, I say, the frustration that the president has is that he believes that other countries have cut rates and the U.S. hasn't. And he worries, just as with the BLS, he worries that maybe there's some partisan calculus going on here. And if you look at the Fed votes, it's very disappointing, I think, as a person who's long believed in the independence of the Fed, that we would have Fed votes that were separated along party lines. It's very disappointing to me that the Fed would be putting an explanation out there for these unusually high rates, that there's this massive uncertainty and massive inflation coming from tariffs without actually showing us their work.
Right.
So give us the work so that we could actually give us the work. Show us
Kevin,
why you think it is, and then maybe we'll be convinced and know it's not partisan.